Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, the podcast where two married lifelong storytellers talk about stories. I'm Pavi Prochko, audiobook narrator, author, etc.
And I'm Colin Funk.
What do you do?
What do I forget? What do I do? Teaching
What is it that you do?
artist, childhood development expert. That's what I do.
Yes, and today we're going to be talking about
Saltburn.
But first, let's go to our moment of the week.
Sure.
You start.
Okay. We just caught up on the most recent season of Sex Education. Is it the last? Did we decide? Did we look it up?
I did not look it up, but
Why
it
don't you
really
look it
felt
up
like it. I'll
real
look it up
quick?
right now.
Yeah,
You
look it
talk
up
while I
time.
do that.
So we watched the most recent season of Sex Education, and maybe I want to talk about that on an episode or something. But because I think we talked about it, that this last season had some missed moments in the way that I don't think they had very many other missed moments in any other seasons. But I think what's her face, the actress who plays Amy. Did you find it?
It is over.
It is?
It looks
So it's
like
the final
the fourth
season.
and final season. Yep.
So what's the actresses? I was going to, since you had it out. If you were listening to me at all.
I wasn't.
Maybe we start that over.
Sex Education. I also wasn't on a good website for that, so.
No, you could.
The actress playing Amy is Amy Lou Wood.
Her name is Amy?
Yep.
Amy Lou Wood.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to start from, we've been watching.
Yep.
So there's. All right, so we have been watching, rewatching, or we just caught up on the latest episode, season of Sex Education, which also happens to be, also the latest episode,
Yes.
because it's the last of the season and the series, because this was the final season.
Yeah.
And throughout the season, we've been watching, and it felt a little bit rushed, and knowing that it's the last season makes it make sense that it felt a little. They're like, let's. It felt like they were like, okay, we got to get to a lot of these final moments of these characters' story arcs.
Yeah.
So everything got kind of rushed. They're like, okay, we're having big epiphanies and big learning moments, and it's happening in a lot of different places at the same time, and they're not really woven together very well. And,
Yeah.
But it
Kind of
wasn't-
jumped the shark a little bit. They've got weird spiritual things happening too,
Yeah.
Eric talks to God, and it's a little bit.
Right. It's an interesting thing to explore, this kind of the juxtaposition between religion and sexuality. We feel like this fight between things that are there is kind of an anti-religious feel. And I'm curious to know if it seems like it's the same or even more to that effect in the UK, where in the US it feels like people don't really talk about religion unless they are also very right-wing.
Right.
Not that people who are Democratic and left-wing couldn't be religious. There are plenty.
Right. Of course.
But it doesn't seem to be something people may make a big deal about being part of their identity if they are more on the liberal side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing to explore, someone who is kind of in this, especially in this overly queer, overly liberal space, and having them being religious be something that is controversial.
Yeah.
They do that is something interesting about this new series where they're in this new college where they are, where it's very liberal, and they're all about very trendy and touchy-feely. Everyone should be nice and kind. that's like the vibe of the school.
Yeah.
And having like flipping the script and being like, ooh, it's taboo to talk about things that are
like it's
maybe discriminatory, maybe
right. It's actually weird that you are religious.
Right.
Yeah. That's actually going to be a cause. In other spaces, it might be the other way, where it's like, I don't, you go to Jackson, Mississippi, and you're like, I don't really believe in God. And then people are like, what? You don't go to church?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it feels like and especially like, talking 10, 15, 20 years ago, like it's assumed that you're at least partly religious, it feels like. And then anything else beyond that, if you're like, no, I support queer things, people are like, whoa.
Right.
And now it feels like generally there's been a shift in the world, but the pendulum swings, and
right.
now people are seeing the other side and being like, I don't know if I can support that.
Right.
And it is an interesting topic to have, but it got beyond that. I think like the spirituality of it, it felt almost like fantastic.
Right. Yeah. It was like a little bit, fantastical realism, magical realism, when it is a little bit grander than life. The whole series has been a little bit
it's
unrealistic, but it's
been
stylized for sure. But it's
definitely stylized.
But it's not. I don't know. We're watching like religious epiphanies, and that's a little strange.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
that we're
maybe
feeling strange about it.
Yeah, maybe. It felt more like a departure from the style for me, generally. But I guess I should clarify, is that the moment that you want to talk about, or do you want to talk about something else?
No, I was really, I wanted to talk about the actress who plays Amy.
Mm-hmm.
We just looked her up, Amy Lou.
Amy Lou Wood.
Amy Lou Wood. She plays kind of like, not like, she's not a stupid character, but she's meant like her character has always like grown up thinking that she was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this sincerity to the ways that she performs that I think is so brilliant.
It's really good.
That I'm like, I totally believe who you are. I believe that people would think you're stupid. I believe you would think you're stupid too, but you're not. You're not like leaning into it in a way that's like, well, people think I'm stupid, so I'm going to be stupid. She's like very genuinely like okay with how she is.
Yeah.
And knowing that she's not that bright.
Yeah.
And but that character's emotional intelligence is like above and beyond any other character's emotional intelligence, like the rest of the show. She's like always listening to other people and always seeing other people for their own feelings.
Yeah. And this actress is like fantastic at doing it. She's so good. She's excellent. Like right there, present in every single moment.
Yeah. That I don't really get how she does it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like I am like struggling to pick out just like one moment, because she has just like she has great moments.
Yeah.
Like, but they feel so normal and real.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoy that there's like a moment where she's taking photos of herself. That's like becomes her art project. She like takes photos of herself, and like she just like dances by herself. I don't know. She's like infinitely watchable, but also so grounded and so sincere that I keep being like, I don't know how you did that, and I believe that that's how you feel, and that's what you said, and you really believe it. I don't get it, because she's
a talent.
It's excellent.
I want to see more of her.
She's really great. It makes me want more.
Yeah.
So that's my moment.
Great. My moment, we just got through season 18 of The Simpsons.
Oh, sure.
So we're going through The Simpsons. And I really like it. I think it's really good. But right between season 18 and 19 is when the movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we fell asleep, I think, watching the movie last night. But what caught my attention was the moment is like a little twofold. Where it's the Spider Pig moment is just
I mean,
infinitely hilarious. Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does.
It's a perfect joke.
It keeps going. I don't remember the rest of the song. Something about like, can he spin a web? No, he can't. He's a pig. It's so funny. But they bring him back at the very beginning of season 19. The opening is a little different because it takes into account all of the stuff that happens in the movie. Right, and it has like a little Spider Pig moment. And I was like, oh, it's Spider Pig. I guess we have to watch the movie.
Yes.
Not that you have to, but they do a lot of callbacks.
Well, that's what we were doing. We were watching it in order, including the movie and stuff in order.
And I was very happy to see that what I saw of the movie so far was still funny. I liked it the first time around.
Yeah.
And I'm still liking it now, and I think the show is great. I love it. But Spider Pig, that's my moment of the week.
Does whatever a Spider Pig does.
Yeah.
I think that it's
so funny. We use it for everything.
It's a perfect joke.
It's a perfect joke. Use it for everything.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to
Saltburn. Let's do it. So what did we know about this? Did we do synopsis first? Switch hit synopsis?
No, we do what we know first.
What do we know about Saltburn?
We're back. We're back from
break, so we're a little
our holiday
rusty.
Break. Welcome. Happy
We're gonna try some new things too. Hello.
Happy 2024.
Yes. So we're what do we know about Saltburn going in? I didn't know anything.
Very little. I just heard it's great, and there was a couple like everyone's scandalized by this one scene. Like I kept seeing that as like a
it was
title.
and it was a very queer thing. Like it was like felt like it was supposed to be like this gay something, some kind of
I knew that it
angle.
Was, yeah.
So the only reason why I knew that was because of who I was seeing online that was commenting about it. And the only comments I saw was like, it is perfect and wonderful and no notes about this film.
Sure. So that's it.
That's all I knew.
Yeah. No, not about the content.
Nope.
I didn't know who was in it. I didn't know nothing about it.
So let's do our switch hit synopsis. Let's do it. Yeah. We'll tag team here. So it starts.
We follow Oliver.
We're following Oliver Quick. And he is a student at Oxford.
Yep.
Where he is an outsider. He seems to be. He's like a scholarship kid, and he, in kind of the first act of the film, he's making friends and trying to like find his place socially.
Right.
And it's basically kind of that first year at school.
Yeah.
Because then the summer comes, and after confiding in his very attractive, wealthy friend Felix in all of this tragedy about his life, Felix invites him to come over.
Yes.
For the summer to Saltburn, which is their family estate. They're like old money, like very, very wealthy.
Like old money, like not like U.S. old money.
Right.
Like,
they have like like Henry VIII lived at this palace kind of old money. And then he starts to kind of Oliver starts to kind of dig his talons into the family. And you find out pretty quickly that he is actually manipulating the family into allowing him to stay longer. He's lied about a lot of things. And then by the end, he has taken kind of control of this family. He has kind of his birthday. Even when he is exposed as a liar, he ends up kind of killing everybody who knows or getting them kind of removed from the situation. So he like kills Felix, who knows that he's been lying. He kills the sister who knows or is suspicious of his
I don't know if even
activity.
She knows, but she is like against him.
She doesn't like him.
Whether or not she knows anything, she's certainly like saying like, I'm going to make sure you're not going to be around, essentially. And that's it's implied, at least. Like
he gets a lot of money from the Lord of the House, the father, to leave. And then when that father dies, I think he commits suicide. It was unclear. I was not very clear on. There was like a obituary.
Maybe,
I didn't read it.
It was clear, and I just missed it.
But he ends up
it didn't seem to
orchestrating this meeting between him and the lady of the house, who he was very close with and was kind of like the key, the way in to this family's heart was this mother,
the matriarch.
and the matriarch. It's Rosamund Pike, who is fabulous,
right.
and
She's great.
She ends up bringing him back to Saltburn and then she falls ill somehow, and he takes care of her until he basically kills her too, and then he's just the Lord of Saltburn at the end.
Right. Because he convinces her to sign it all over.
He signs all of it over to him because she's all alone. Her whole family's gone. And so he takes care of her until he inherits. And so the movie ends with him
making that, like, he has this, like, his confession speech, essentially.
Yeah,
not a confession,
right.
like,
and he's got, it's like the whole device that they use at the beginning is like, oh, was I in love with Felix? Where he's like kind of in this interview style, like talking to someone. And then, so we're basically watching the story that he's telling. And then at the end, we see the conclusion of the speech where he's like, I did it all. I've planned from the beginning and I'm an evil mastermind. Kills her and then dances through the whole house naked. Mm-hmm. That's the movie.
Yes, it is.
That's the plot of the movie. What did you think?
You're so funny. So I think, okay. I thought it was okay. I guess, okay. I didn't love it. And part of that is that I do feel like there was a lot of hype around it. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of elements to it that I think are successful. And I see why. I see why it's popular.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I think people are wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I think like to go big picture, I'm like, I didn't love it. I didn't like it. The movie generally. I think there were things that were really working for it, but I think they made some huge storytelling mistakes.
Yeah.
And again, the hype was, they're wrong. You were wrong about that movie. It's not actually as good as you think it is. So let's get into more detail here. Okay. So maybe we start with things that we actually really liked about this film.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, beautiful art direction.
Gorgeous.
It's like one of the best shot films that I've seen in a very long time.
Incredible pictures. Like really, like some of them.
The images are
very impressive cinematography. Like
really
deserves every award for that. It's really very good.
Beautiful, this film.
Yeah.
The shot, like that is, and the way it's shot and the way it's, I like the way that they pass time along.
Yeah.
They things clip, like things move, and I appreciate the pace of it.
Yeah.
It keeps you going even though, and it's not like a ton of time that is.
No,
that
it's like a relatively short amount of time, but you get the sense of like all of the life that is lived.
Yeah. But
despite how much time may or may not have been passed, like you see the full year go by, the full school year go by, but even how they do the montages for that, you see how much life is lived within that time. And then summer is obviously objectively shorter than a school year, but you still see life lived.
That's like, it really feels like that first piece of the story, that as you said, the first act at Oxford was like, felt like 3 seconds while the summer was the story.
Right.
Even the stuff after the summer was like nothing.
Right.
Even though like the most time passes in that.
Yes.
We think. I'm not really sure. We decided
remember.
We didn't know how much time passed.
Yeah.
But they really focused on, they allowed there to be some kind of like zooming in and out of the
compression and expansion of time a little bit.
Exactly. To really highlight what the true part of the story is. Like I mean, essentially the first part of the story is exposition.
Yeah.
Like until he's invited to Saltburn.
It really, we are given now I'm probably going to go back on this later, but we're given a really artful curation of the information, right? So that's why we're using a lot of this expansion and compression, is because the storytellers are giving us the information we need to know in order to understand the story. So we obviously don't need every single thing that happens in the school year. We just need to know some things. And so you compress and expand time based on the things you want to show people.
Right.
They did great.
I thought they did really well.
With a pin. I'm putting a pin in that for later.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes. Yeah. Really, really beautifully shot and structured.
Yeah. What else did you like about it?
The performances I thought were quite good. I thought the script was really, like the dialogue was great.
And I know what you meant.
And Rosamund Pike is so good.
Ooh, there was a couple moments that are just incredible. She's
good. So good.
She's great.
Yeah. I think at first I didn't really love the main actor, but then I don't know. I think maybe I just don't like how he looks.
Wow.
And then I think it warmed up to me. I don't know.
You think he's unattractive?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit ugly. But then I think maybe I warmed up to him throughout. Like there was something that just like was off-putting to me about.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was weird.
Like, I guess from a storytelling, I'm curious if you're like, what does the attractiveness of that actor have to do with the storytelling?
I'm not sure it has anything to do with the storytelling.
Well, it's affecting your
right? It's affecting my interpretation, my how I've received it, but it might just be a personal thing.
But I'm actually curious how it like. Are you saying like you didn't believe what was happening because he wasn't?
No, I think maybe we'll get to this too, but I read creepiness into him from the beginning because of how he looked.
I'm not sure that was not intentional.
Yeah.
I think it might have been intentional.
Poor
is
actor.
What I mean. People know.
I know.
I'm not
but,
saying he looks creepy, but like
no. And in the end, it ended up like
what's his face
passing.
who played Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
always plays.
He's a little bit creepo.
He just like he reads a little
off.
You're like, I'm getting some weird.
Yeah,
and it's not just the way he looks; it's the way he uses the way he looks.
Yes, of course.
It's like a mask. So
yeah,
thing.
and I'm sure that goes into it. I'm sure. Yeah, it's intentional.
Not sure.
Or can be.
The casting, I think, is intentional.
Yeah.
Where he's like conventionally attractive enough with elements that are like, I can't tell. Are you attractive? Are you not?
Yeah.
And that's, to say like, we're talking about society's expectations and like what we expect as viewers. As
like what am I?
A romantic lead. We open the movie and he's like this.
It's kind of like short, gremlin-y looking person.
It's kind of about. They set it up like this is the love story,
right?
Was it a love story?
Absolutely not. Yeah,
obviously.
In no world was it a love story.
No, yeah. That's a
red herring.
It does feel like a red herring.
A little bit of a misdirection. Which is not in itself bad thing.
Right, I'm not mad about that.
Yeah.
That's not why I didn't like it, but I was curious about.
Yeah, I think what happens is I just like am like off put by the look, and then I'm like don't believe the actor for some reason, but then it passes eventually. I don't know. I ended up liking him in the end as a performer. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just that's very curious. Is there because there's like sincerity tied to attractiveness. Like if we're not reading like sincerity on someone, we don't find them as attractive. And when we read sincerity on someone, we find them more attractive.
Right.
I think there's something tied between the two.
Yeah.
And throughout the film, characters are kind of off-put by this character for different reasons.
That's true.
And of course, like they make it kind of a class thing, but it's not. also there's like power dynamics based on attractiveness that kind of get like once we start like zooming in on the scope, those kind of go away. Like he's able to kind of use that to his advantage.
Sure.
I don't know. I think talking about like that piece of it is interesting.
Yeah.
Like
I think maybe I was,
you don't have to defend yourself.
No, I'm not trying to defend myself. I'm just, I am feeling like it is a weird bias that I have against, like, for example, people who can't grow facial hair. Like the weird look, like it was something about his sideburns that like kind of like he doesn't saltburns. He doesn't have sideburns because he can't grow his facial hair like that. It's like weird and patchy. I'm sorry for everyone who has patchy facial hair. It's not universal, but it's I don't know. There was just something about how clean his face was that I just like did not love. I don't know. We'll move on. Let's move on.
I don't know. You're confusing me more. I think.
I know. Let's just move on.
Yeah, I get that. Like pieces of his attractiveness that's fine. I'm just like wondering what it means, not what about his attractiveness.
It might not mean anything, and it might just be
like. But I'm trying to explore what it might mean. That's the whole point.
Okay. I think that there is the there's a lot of people that clock him in that character in the film as like being off, even though they set up a lot of the whole beginning sets him up as like, well, he's just a pariah because he's poor and he doesn't have any friends, and then they're trying to bring him in and it looks like they're all just being mean to him, but really they're all, what we find out later is like, oh, they actually kind of saw how creepy he was from the beginning. So it's very possible that it was a deliberate creepiness that I'm like honing in on, that I'm like, ooh, there's something off about his look.
That's fine. I'm just like, it's interesting to think about how a character's attractiveness affects the storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's not just the physical appearance, but also the choices of acting,
right? The
level of sincerity of his, and how we read it in terms of believability, and especially in terms of like you said, there's something that we're feeling is not quite right. It's like the character Farley. We haven't really talked about Farley.
Yeah,
Farley, who grew up with Felix's character,
right?
And Farley's like conventionally attractive.
Yeah. We believe him, even though he's kind of a shitbag in lots of other ways. He is actually mean, but he is 100% genuine. He is telling the truth.
There's actually a good scene where, like the karaoke scene, where I literally don't even know what the event was, but they have. It
was the Henrys. It was the Henrys dinner. Like all the Henrys come over, and it was all the dad's friends and their wives, and Farley sends him up to
after Oliver and Farley have this like heart to heart,
right?
And it feels like Oliver's like getting to Farley, and it's essentially like, we're the same, and Farley's like, yeah, but I'm real,
right? Yeah,
and you're like, yeah, you are, like, you are both shitbags, but the difference is like he kind of comes by it honestly, and Oliver's lying his way through, like and Farley he's not like whispering behind your back. He's saying the things to your face.
Yeah, and it's even interesting how they even act with
they're good
the
foils.
Song.
Farley is a great foil.
Yeah, that with the song that Farley chose was like, you pay my rent. I love you because you pay my rent. And Oliver's like struck by that. He's like, oh, I've been played. He didn't know the songs. He's like, oh shit, I see what Farley's doing.
Awkward. Everyone feels awkward.
And then he's like, Farley, you come do. It's actually your song too. And Farley's like, yeah, hell yeah, it is. And he comes and he proudly sings it. He owns it. So it's like a very explicit demonstration of that juxtaposition there. Of the foiling, yeah,
great. I mean, it's a great use of foiling. I mean, it's like really, really, it's like one of those very clear examples of like, oh, that's what a foil is.
Yeah.
Like that's, because it's not, I don't know. For me, it took me a long time to be like, but what is it?
Yeah.
It's, what is that? And I think that's a great example of like, yeah, this character shares a lot of qualities, and what makes them different is the important thing.
Right.
It really highlights things in Oliver's character.
Yeah.
By them being different in those very specific areas.
Yeah.
And his sincerity, even in his meanness, makes him charming.
Yeah. I liked him more. And in the end, of course, you end up seeing that it's like, you know, even though he is a shitbag and even though he is mean, he kind of got the shit end of the stick too.
Yeah, but in a different way.
In a different way, yeah.
And privileged in a way that certainly Oliver never was.
Right.
Even though Oliver wasn't as unprivileged as he had.
He lived a fine life despite all his lies about growing up with addicts. And
so yeah, we talked about that. Was there anything else
that we
loved? Performances, I like the foiling. I mean, there are other things that I liked and I thought were successful, but
like the soundtrack is interesting because it like the choice of setting it in 2006 is really interesting, and I feel like there's going to be we're seeing a lot of media that is getting set in pre-smartphone time.
Sure.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be like we need it to be as close to now as possible, but the cell phone complicates things.
It really does.
So we're going to put it in 2006 because smartphones really aren't a thing yet.
Well, it was an easy device to, not a smartphone, but the device used in media where there's miscommunication based on limited communication.
Right.
And now in movies, they have to essentially be like, we're out of service, or there are simple things where like, oh, I'll just send them a text and that would clear everything up like that. And I am
it's like I can
still
ping
to this
your
day
location.
Frustrated when simple solutions like that do not happen.
Aren't used. Yeah.
I'm like,
it's like, are you telling me no one has my find my friend for that person and they're missing? You can find them. Now all new iPhones have like that satellite feature. So no one's getting lost anymore.
Right.
You know? I mean, granted you need to actually have that phone, but yeah, it's like, it's becoming less and less possible to actually be missing.
Sure.
You know?
Of course it happens. Of course, like,
of course,
that's an easy one too. Just like, their phone, we found their phone. We didn't find them. Like,
right.
Easy peasy.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
There are easy fixes for a lot of these things. That's fine. But like, it really, I mean, especially the movie's called Saltburn and it's about this estate, which is like older than time. Like that's the valuable thing. It's like breaking into a world in which you do not belong. And it is beyond technology. It is beyond, it's like,
and without
it's not
the help
valuable
of
because
social
of technology.
Media. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's not like you're not swooping in and becoming a TikTok star and that's why you get the favor of, like, now people are getting famous for nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Like literally nothing. On doing
stupid videos on social media. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he actually physically had to go someplace to do a thing and he can't.
And it's about like using the interpersonal relationship to get ahead.
Right.
And without the noise, like if he had social media and he was able to like pop on Facebook, if Felix popped on Facebook and saw that Oliver's parents were alive and well, and
right,
it would be really easy to disprove those things.
Right. Yeah.
It's
the lying doesn't work so much.
The lying doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was interesting. It makes it kind of seamless. It doesn't, we aren't like bending over backwards to like find ways around these things, which I do find makes contemporary storytelling difficult.
Yeah. And I think that I'm like taking notes because I'm like, I think that is a thing that I'm going to have to do with a lot of the stories that I write, that I'm going to have to like put it somewhere else.
Sure.
close to today, but as far away from social media as possible, or in a world where there isn't any, because it really does it just throws a wrench in so many things that we have traditionally used in stories. Mm-hmm. It's like, to go back to Fire Island, actually, it was like a really great way of using today's technology for a story like Pride and Prejudice, but it's like so many,
Bodies does it really well.
Right. And it's just, you really have to take it into account. And it's just a complication that sometimes
Bodies uses it as like the device. Like
it's like
they lose power
point
to their phone and like they
lose their minds. It's so funny.
It's wild.
Bodies. It's good. I love that. So that I liked that. I really liked where they set it. I think that was really important.
So there's lots of like smaller elements that we like.
Yes.
It feels like overall though, the storytelling in this was not. It didn't live up to what I had gotten from the hype.
Yeah, and let's talk about why that is. My guess, it has to do with the reveal. It has everything to do with the twist. And I think a big complaint I think I have generally is like, if you structure something to appear as a thing, people are going to take it as that thing, even if it's not a really good way of doing it. As an example, if you structure a joke, set up punchline, people are gonna be like, oh my God, that's so funny, even if the joke wasn't funny, simply because it was structured like a joke.
Right.
So in this, it's structured like there's a big reveal at the end. It's structured where you see the whole movie, and in that big like villain speech he gives right at the end of this movie where he tells you how he did everything, it's structured as if we're finding out for the first time, when it's like, oh, that was exactly what I thought had happened, and you're just confirming it for me.
Right.
And that blows the rest of the movie away. Like it makes the rest of the movie not good.
Yeah, I feel like in the first act of the film, where he's a student at Oxford, we don't quite get a sense of who he is and what he wants, but there are clues to his character.
Yeah.
Throughout him, like just like abandoning his friend.
Sure.
His friend. I don't think they were ever actually friends.
Right.
The other, that like,
and we forgive that too, because he's like overbearing and weird. So we even forgive
that's
it.
True. They set that up to be, but I mean, he's kind of a dick about it. He just like straight up denies him when looking at him.
Right.
Like, oh no, my friend's already left.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of shitty.
Sure.
It feels very cold-blooded to me.
Yeah.
In a way that I'm like, I couldn't actually do that.
Sure.
I would be like, yeah, I was here with my friend. Can he come join? Like that's immediately what I thought. Of course, like they've set up at this point that there's like clearly class differences, and not just like financially, but like there are different worlds, and to get into these like social groups is kind of a bigger, like not a normal thing.
Right.
It's not like,
it's very British. It's like even today, getting into those old money social groups is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's very strange, it's just like not something, like it doesn't feel like if you're just like, because anyone can make friends with anyone. Yeah. Until like class systems are set up, and it feels like
just don't have access.
It is weird. Yeah. And Oxford is a place where I would think it's like, well, if you're hobnobbing with them, you could become friends with them, but they clearly set it up. It's like, it's not actually that simple. Yeah. There are the way they talk about the other characters, and like, no one wants to be near him. He looks like he gets everything from the thrift stores. Like,
right.
And it's like, what? Who cares?
Yeah.
Now, and I think part of it too, beyond, I guess I wanted to talk about this, part of beyond the technology thing about setting it in 2006, it's also pre this like very queer revolution. We're in a very queer, trendy, and there's a lot of trends now to it's like cool to be self-made and handmade, and
Sure.
like there's a status to kind of like building yourself up, and there always kind of was, but like now it's like cool.
Right.
Now with things like TikTok, where you can get really rich doing things on your own, in your own house, making your own clothes, sourcing vintage things and piecing them together, not spending any money. Like that's that's like that is like status now.
Yeah.
In a way that like
back then it was, you actually had to shop someplace to get status. You actually had to buy the expensive
You actually have to have
piece.
the money
Yeah.
to be able to afford those things. And now it's like, well, yeah, I can make that money again. Not that making videos is doing nothing, but
Sure.
like, it's not like you don't have to have wealth to like gain favor from large groups of people.
Or at the very least, there are plenty of people who have gained that favor. Even if it's 1 in a
It's still
million,
probably very
it's still
difficult.
many more people than there were in
Many
2006,
millions of
for
people
sure.
in the world.
Right.
But yeah, so I think there is a weird. What are we talking about?
We're talking about why he, like the class bit with him at the beginning, that we're seeing him.
Oh, so we see pieces of him. Yes.
Pieces of him being kind of not great.
But
and that
think
maybe those are the clues to him being evil.
There were some clues, which is like, I think they do it really well in the first act. I still didn't really like buy everything that he was saying.
Sure.
Because there was clues again of him lying in those places. So I was always kind of skeptical of what he was saying and what he was telling. Like,
and then there's a turn at some point where it's basically when he like hooks up with the sister.
I was gonna say, I think
it's like it's that moment where I was like, okay, so he's actually.
Is that moment before the moment that he has with the mother?
Yeah,
that's that one scene. The sister was first.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like it's just like the moment where it's like, oh, he's actually the spider with the web, right? It's like that he's actually infecting this family.
Right.
He is the villain. It's not the other way.
Right.
It's not like he's going to be like corrupted by the rich people. He's corrupting the rich people. And it became very obvious at that point. And then it kind of just, it's like, oh yeah, they've been showing me all of that in Act 1.
Right.
Which then brings my question, why are you going to then reveal it later as if you weren't that obvious? It was obvious the whole time, basically.
I mean, it doesn't seem, from what other people are saying and what's happening on the internet, it doesn't seem that most people thought it was obvious, which I think is strange. Because I thought it was
very
obvious.
weird. Yeah.
That's the weird part for me. And I'm not sure if it's like, are people watching it and being like, yay, there's kind of like queer themes and it's like a beautifully filmed thing. It's just like what I felt about Call Me By Your Name.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed by Call Me By Your Name.
Same.
Because it was like, after like, I thought it was like the new generation Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah.
And Brokeback Mountain is excellent.
It's so good. It's still good today.
It's very good.
Despite it being about gay people not being able to deal with it and then, getting gay bashed. Which is often like a complaint that I have sometimes about like gay, media where it's like always about people dying, but it's like, it's actually very good.
It's done well, like, and it's so like true, like that's people.
Yeah. That's great.
Real experiences. But like they tell the story well. Call Me By Your Name feels like this like weird kind of like, that feels like, at least Saltburn has interesting elements in it.
That's true.
Call Me By Your Name.
There was intrigue for sure.
I'm like, it feels like a
slog.
Is a kind of boring YA novel.
Yeah.
Just like set in is Italy, right? Italy?
Yeah. Italy. Yes. Like the border of France and Italy.
Okay.
I think.
Oh yeah. And it's just like, it's this like beautiful, weird teen fever dream, like summer love tryst. And it just like feels poetic more than there's no substance to it.
Yeah.
And like the queer things, they're so watered down. Like,
yes.
Like there's like a straight sex scene that they like,
it's like very explicit. And then they always pan away for the gay ones.
All the gay ones.
every gay sex scene, they would just pan away to the window where there's a beautiful breeze coming in, and there's this wafting curtain. But no, we get to see like full on breasts.
Speaking of that movie, like there's something that ties these two together in my brain, other than like beautiful cinematography, and but also like this need in queer movies to have these like symbolic, metaphoric, visual, like sex adjacent moments.
Yes.
Like,
give me an example.
Well, in Call Me by Your Maybe, it's the peach scene. It's where he like,
call me by your maybe.
Call me by your maybe. Call me maybe.
Said, call me maybe.
Call me by your maybe. Oh my God. Call me by your name.
Yes.
There's the peach scene.
Yes, the peach scene where it's like explicit and it's like very weird and it's like sensual but like off.
But there's like a metaphor to it, and I'm like, but why? I don't. Yeah. It's like it probably reads better in a book than it does like watching it in a movie. There's something poetic to. I probably wouldn't like it either way. I think it's dumb.
Yes.
But.
And then in Saltburn,
that's like the scene that kept being like, people were scandalized by the bath scene.
And
I remember like, I was watching it. I'm like, okay, so Felix's character jerks off in the bath.
Yeah.
And then Oliver, after, like, as the water is draining, gets to the bottom of the bath and is like slurping up the bath water. Essentially,
like around the hole
of the bath, of the drain. And so there's like, something like it's metaphoric. It's like getting at something. There's like he is like he's not like licking, but like that's the implication that he ejaculated in this bath water,
right? And he's like trying to get whatever he can out of it. It's so, but I'm not sure what you're getting at exactly.
Power move.
Yeah.
In a way that like, at least that one.
It lines up with the creepiness of that character at the very least.
Right. At least like we're still, it lulls us into like, okay, maybe he just is so obsessed with him that his goal is to get together with Felix. Like that's what he's in love. He wants to be with Felix. He's maybe a little creepy and a little bit.
It's an obsession story, right? That's what we're getting set up to see.
Yeah, but even that to me, I feel like was undercut by the hooking up with the sister.
Same.
Where I'm like,
well, now what's happening?
Yeah, he stopped hooking up with her because the brother said so, but because he knows how the pieces fall, not because that was part of his plan to get Felix in the first place. It didn't line up.
Right.
I was like, I'm not sure what the sister, it makes sense in how the story plays out, but it stops all momentum of being confused about what his character is doing.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like, and because then right after, I think it was right after that scene was the scene where the
scene with the mom.
He goes to the mom and like,
but you're so beautiful. Like, and like charms her
very quickly. And I'm like,
okay,
so he's working everyone.
Right.
I don't know what he's up to yet, but he's doing something.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has to do with Felix.
Necessarily, right. Yeah.
Like he's working some sort of angle and he's okay at
however he can get in, he will.
Get in.
Yeah. And so he stops hooking up with the sister because he knows he'll be ostracized for continuing. So he has to convince Felix that no, I didn't. She's lying, or Farley lied because Farley's the one that told. It's like Farley lied. Why would I do that? Farley lied because he knows that he'll be sent away for having done it. So that can't happen in order for him to do this plan. But again, it doesn't really have to do with Felix. It doesn't have to do with the sister. It has to do with the job, basically.
Yeah.
This like master plan.
Right.
So
he also does that thing with for the dad. He resources his the pottery, the plates.
The pottery, yeah. And he sends that email Farley. Like he
I forgot.
ingratiates himself to the dad by saying like, oh yeah, I saw these plates you have that are these ancient things. You have the genuine article. And then he also
Like
sends the email.
Huguenot plates, something like that.
Yeah. Like from Farley's phone being like, I've got some plates to sell, so that he could try to get Farley out of the picture.
Yeah.
So
that's
there's a big criticism that I've got, at least, is with the story. That reveal undercuts everything.
Right. Any other? So I guess like we were talking about the story, and I was also talking about, we kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah.
Another element that like really bugs me are these like overly poetic, overly metaphoric.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can be beautiful, and we can film things beautifully. We can have moments that are like alluding,
right?
to
Well,
sex
it's like
without-
his sex in the on the grave.
Yeah.
He has sex with Felix's grave.
Yeah, I'm
Beautifully shot at first. I mean, the whole thing is
still was
beautifully
beautifully
shot.
shot, yeah.
It's like the perspective is great, and you've got a lot of sky, and it's like looked so good. But then I'm also like, why is he doing that? I don't get it. I didn't get it.
I mean,
Other than he's
he's kind of messed up.
kind of messed up, right?
It's like a weird power.
Yeah.
Like,
I
is
don't-
he? I don't know. I don't get it.
And it's like all I wish that they had just leaned into he's a creepo, and if they had like really like, oh, we're actually watching a villain try to do this thing. If they had done Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, that Broadway play where it's like we're actually watching the guy who says at the beginning outright,
Right.
I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna murder this family for revenge or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be that obvious, that explicit. It could be a act 2 reveal where it's like, oh, actually he's the creepo, and now we're just watching kind of this horror movie unfold
Right.
from his perspective. Because then we get to actually, I don't know, I get to take advantage of the fact that it's all been obviously laid out for me.
Right.
Because once you throw in that reveal, it ends up, you're telling me I'm supposed to be surprised.
Well, especially, and I think like I wasn't super surprised by this because it felt set up to me. But like when he goes home, when Felix takes him to his parents' house,
Yeah.
I think that was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
In that, like, it's very clear at that point that everything is fake. But like also, I can see how someone would be surprised by that. If they
Sure.
weren't like picking up on things, if they weren't
Yeah.
like paying attention, or they had just like forgotten,
That
I don't
whole
know, or
story.
like haven't like connected
Yeah,
like his
the-
actions to what he
Right.
might have said earlier.
Right.
That's fine. I understand that might be a shocking reveal.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly shocked by it.
And
I don't
even
know
the
why- and-
structure of that scene undercuts the shock of it.
Yeah.
Because he fights so hard after having done all this like creepy lying stuff. He just fights so hard to not go that, I don't know, it just kind of, again, it's the setup. It's like they spent so much time in the conflict of saying, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, that I'm like, well, he's obviously hiding something.
Yeah.
Especially because we just watched him do all this creepy shit. He's obviously hiding something.
And that for me was a turning point because I thought part of the setup was, you know, he's kind of awkward. He's reading the situations, he's learning, he's getting better, and he's like he's just, I thought that moment was going to happen and he was somehow going to get out of it
Yeah.
or get
Yeah.
get through it unscathed.
Right.
And because they're setting up that he's, you know, he's good
Right.
at
At this thing.
at that
and
thing. So
somehow he
when-
ends up I don't know.
And when they changed it and they're like, oh, now and then they switch right to like right after that, like Felix stops talking to him.
Yeah.
And then that same night he ends up dead.
Right.
It's like, well, that's because Oliver didn't have anything left. Like he's lost all ways back in through Felix.
Right.
He's done. He's lost Felix.
Right.
And that was a little disappointing.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I'm like, okay, they set this up as a love story about Felix.
Mm-hmm.
And are we supposed to, one, believe that Oliver maybe didn't do it when he dies in the same spot that we see Oliver leave?
Right.
Like immediately.
Yeah.
Like the scene right before was him leaving him in the spot where he
died
found the
in
next
that
day.
costume. Right. Yeah.
Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't know. That's like, I'm like, well, yeah, he did it.
Right.
Like, we don't have
Obviously.
to have seen it
Right.
for that to feel like it was implied.
Yeah.
I don't think
Same.
it was a question. Whether or not he was sad, sure.
Sure.
But then
That could have been interesting too. That could have been a really interesting thing where it's like we're watching this villain who is very honest with us, the people watching the story at least, or the way that it's told is honest to us.
right.
In that we're watching
had
him
been
try to
that
do it. And
way,
if
you
he had
mean?
been like, well, shit, this person that I actually do love in whatever way a psychopath can love people, I have to kill him now because I can't get my major goal and I'm going to be very sad about it, but I'm going to do it.
Which
That could work for me.
I think maybe there was an element of it. I don't think they leaned too far into it because they like just made him a psychopath. But like, there was clearly like there was some sort of affection.
Yeah.
And there's like a weird, at least lust obsession. And he cries while he's fucking the grave.
Right.
And I'm like, is that just saying like, you're kind of like, I had to do this, but this is like, it is a sad, like I had to give up this thing. And this is
actually a sacrifice for me. Yeah. Maybe.
sure.
It's just like all of
those-
that makes
those-
more sense again without the weird reveal, without the weird villain speech.
Yeah, the weird villain speech is
That
weird.
really messes the whole thing up.
I know. I just like, I also feel like those moments, they feel like it doesn't feel like it's powerful storytelling or like important storytelling enough. Like the bathtub maybe could get away with it, but the grave fucking, like it doesn't do enough for the storytelling. Again, other than to be like, he's a nut job.
Yeah.
Other than that, like
If
it
he had
just
just
feels like
cried.
shock value.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And I'm pretty sensitive to like gratuitous shock value, things like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
that if it can ruin storytelling for me.
Yeah. It can. Yeah. I think in the end too, I just thought of this when we were talking and I'm saying like the storytelling being honest. And I think maybe that's the big problem I have is that it feels like it was being dishonest. I feel like they lied and tried to pass that off as a twist. A lie isn't a twist. Thank you, Bob's Burgers.
It can be.
It can be a twist. See, a lie can be a twist, but a lie isn't necessarily a twist. You're lying to me. You're pretending like you're not showing me this thing, and you are. And then acting like you didn't the whole time. It's just so strange.
Right.
And it was like Power of the Dog did this better.
Power of the Dog is nuts.
Power of the Dog is nuts, and it's like kind of similar.
There are there's a lot of similarities, I
Yeah.
would say, between the two, and I think Power of the Dog doesn't have any of the problems that
Right. Because they're not trying to
Saltburn does.
hide anything.
Yeah.
It's like that's part of it. It's like, oh, so you just like didn't in Saltburn, it's like you just didn't show us that. You're showing us at the end.
And it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense now.
But right. It's like, okay, that's what I thought happened. So like we were talking about
There
like
was
oh,
no question. There was no.
yeah.
I guess like
oh,
that was the.
it's obviously him. So if once the reveal comes, I'm going to find out it wasn't.
I guess my problem with all of that is that in the end, if it wasn't him and it still ended up that he inherited everything, would that have made a difference?
I think probably it would have been a little bit being there, like Chance the Gardener, stumbling into it. I don't know. There would have been something interesting about that he's like positioned well without having been the orchestrator,
like
or it's like he was,
machine. It's like,
or he was like outsmarted by someone.
Opposite, like, where the favor, he like ended up being in favor for some reason.
Right.
But clearly he was, the story is that he is the player. He's the, he's the hand. That's, he's orchestrating this whole chess game.
Yeah.
And he does it well. And I think you're right. Since it's a story about him moving the pieces around, it would be more interesting to watch him kind of do it and see. It would give us those moments of him like, oh, he's getting so close, and now his family is a part of the picture, and he has to deal with that. And how does he deal with that and get out of it?
Right.
Even if it's like, well, he can't, which means now he has to kill Felix, which means
he's actually cutting out his heart,
sacrificing.
Right? Yeah.
But like they clearly, and they undercut that at the end by being like, I loved him, sure, maybe, but I also hated him because I hated all of these people. Like, I'm like, okay, so you didn't care about. So then why did you care about him like as kind of like a person? Like that's
right.
You were never like really sad about him. Yeah. I mean, there were other moments where he like was like fake crying.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not clear.
Or maybe he was real crying. I don't know. It's unclear.
Yeah.
And it's not in a way that like, I think you're right. If we were following and watching him actually move the pieces around, we would be more invested in how those pieces were being moved.
Yeah. We might actually root for him in that vile, evil way where we're like, oh, what a vile, vile person, right?
Because once Felix dies, I'm like, I don't know what we're doing anymore. And I don't know what we're waiting for. Yeah. So we're just like kind of like, now we're watching things unfold. Like what's the climax and what's the denouement? Like what's
the climax? I think it's that decision to kill Felix because everything else is the resolution from there.
That's what it feels like.
It feels like Felix dies. He makes that decision. He cuts off the arm, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how important that actually is, as you say, because it's undercut by like, no, I actually hated him in his villain speech. But we have that decision and the climax happens and everything else from there we see him win. We see the daughter. The time speeds up, because it becomes very minutia, very expanded, up until Felix dies. Then it starts speeding up again, and we see very quickly moving into daughter dies. He gets kicked out by father, gets money, finds wife again, and then
it's like that piece of the movie isn't interesting. And it would have been interesting knowing how he's planning it.
Yes. It would have been much more interesting.
Because it doesn't feel
especially if we felt like he had lost and then it turns out he won.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not, the reveals don't feel like reveals. I mean, we've said it, I guess, over and over again, but there's like multiple reasons for that. It's like, one, beyond us not buying into the mystery for the most part and having earlier reveals, it's just like the things that are being revealed, it's like, oh, so it's either the most obvious answer, but it's also like, it also is like, oh, we're supposed to think that that's interesting now that it's been revealed and not before. There wasn't a question. After Felix died, I was like, okay, it doesn't really matter to me whether or not the sister killed herself or he killed the sister.
Right.
It doesn't really matter how the dad died. I have no idea. It doesn't really matter if it was an accident or he like manufactured a way to find the mom again, I guess. But like, and then like she was dying at the end and I'm like, yeah, he could have done it or
he's
not.
Doing it or not, but he's just like positioned.
But why am I caring? That's the question.
Right. Yeah.
Am I supposed to like her? Am I supposed to root for, what am I rooting for?
Right. And that's very confusing because if you have a villain like that, you can write the story for us to root for him in that, like, again, in that like evil way where it's like, oh my God, for some reason, I just like,
a lot of times
I'm rooting for Joker, right? You know, you can do that. You can root for Walter White in
especially
Breaking
they
Bad.
Set it up at the beginning, like, well, these people in this higher class of people are shitbags.
Yeah.
They do it pretty well.
They're actually treating him really poorly. That could be enough.
That could be enough. And we can support him. And at no point am I like on anyone's team.
Right.
I'm not like, these people
I'm
are
on
good,
Carey
these people are
Mulligan's
bad.
team. Carey Mulligan's
Carey
in that.
Mulligan.
She's in it for
Her
like 5
character.
seconds, and her character is so sad. Oh my God.
That's an interesting character too.
Yeah, really interesting.
It's like a weird, it's
Another
not a
foil,
successful
actually.
foil.
Yeah,
That's what I was gonna
a
say.
less successful for sure.
It was, but it's like
It just kind of demonstrated like this is actually what could
it's
happen.
like they don't. Well, it's him learning that like they do not tolerate neediness
Yeah.
if it's tied to kind of like you actually need to be of value.
Yes, you need to be
on top
interesting.
of being needy.
Right.
You need to be interesting. Like, I mean, it's pretty easy, like clear to see because Rosamund Pike is
Yes,
amazing.
she's so good.
That like she wants people around that give her life value because
Yeah.
she is just like floating through life and she's like, it feels like there's no meaning and she needs someone else to give her the meaning to her life.
Yes.
That's what I mean, and that's done really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. And then, so that character is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And having that other character there was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. They were pretty convenient about like, I don't know. Let's okay. So
What else do you want to talk about before we end up going to our new rating system?
I don't know if I think I'm ready to.
You're ready
I think we
to
should
go?
right to the
Yeah,
rating
let's go
system,
to our
'cause there will be
ratings.
more things that.
So we're implementing this new rating system. We have 3 categories
Yes.
that we talk about. Story, technical elements, and rewatch value.
Mm-hmm.
So is this like a thumbs up, thumbs down situation? Are we giving like stars?
I was thinking like, yeah, like out of 5.
Okay, cool. Out of 5. So let's start with story.
Yeah.
Out of 5 stars, what do you say?
I'll give it a 3.
Yeah, I think I would give it a 3 also. No, I lied. I'm going to give it a 2.
You give it a 2?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 2. That it's just so disappointing, that reveal, and it's ruins a lot of things for me.
That's fine. That's fine.
Technical
I
elements.
see the general structure, but it's to me.
Yeah.
Technical elements 5. I mean, I like
Same.
say I really,
I've got 5.
I like technically and let's be specific. Okay, so story we're talking about. This is the first time we're doing
Yeah,
it,
sure,
obviously.
sure.
Story. What we're talking about is like, does it work in terms of?
It's
we're
kind of
obviously
an
talking
overall
about-
big picture structure.
It's kind of what we're talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
But like how the story is kind of
tied together, crafted from like
Crafted.
big picture to little picture, when we like zoom all the way into the minutia and then zoom all the way out, and how is that connected? Like, how does that?
Does the story arc work? Does
Yeah.
it work as like one fluid story? Do each of the pieces help to tell this story? Is it clear what
Right.
the story is
Right.
and what it's trying to say? Like all of those things go into
Yeah.
kind of like what I'm thinking of is like the
Same.
storytelling.
Yeah.
Separately from the technical elements, which are like we've talked about a lot, the cinematography,
Yes.
the acting, the costuming, the
Dialogues, script
dialogue,
writing,
the script
yeah.
writing, all of those things, the book itself,
Yeah.
those, it can be lighting, it can be anything that's just like what pieces of it that like can technically aid in storytelling.
Sure.
But like they can be successful independently of helping storytelling.
Right.
Which I think they do mostly help the storytelling.
Yes.
But they succeed, I think, in spite of
Yeah. I agree.
the storytelling.
So I'm giving it a 5 also for
I'll
the
give it a
technical
5.
elements. Yeah.
Because the costuming is, we didn't talk about it, but the costuming is
Costuming
very
is
interesting.
beautiful. Yeah. Really, really cool.
And it really, like, especially the difference in class.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. The locations are beautiful. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would give the technical elements 5.
Yeah.
Like pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And then
Rewatch value. So this one's interesting because it's about literally, would you rewatch it? And there's a lot of things that go into that, because there's things like, well, sometimes it has to do just with fun. Like that is a fun movie. I would rewatch it. And so that would end up being, you know.
I'd watch Birdcage, Zoolander,
Sure.
Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion.
Yeah.
Even if you would rate I don't give those.
Those are pretty high stories.
I don't know about storytelling in Zoolander.
Sure.
But like
a lot of
Zoolander is a good example. Like the storytelling, I'm not sure is like amazing storytelling. I don't really know what the story is. It's just silly and fun. I would watch it a lot of times though.
Yeah,
it's easy to watch. It's fun to watch. It's fun and funny. Like that is one element of it that can be separate from this one. And I think part of this one, there is that kind of mystery and like there are pieces.
It's like, what did I miss? And we were just watching it. Reminding ourselves a little bit before. And so I think initially I was going to give it a 1 for rewatch value because I like really wasn't interested. But then as we were kind of like reminding ourselves what the beginning of the movie was, I was like, oh, it's actually interesting going back and just seeing kind of what did I miss? What was obvious? There is some rewatch value there. Absolutely. So I think I would probably give it a 3. Not for the fun, but for the intricacy. For the like, what did I want to see again how it was structured. Yeah. What are the things that what did I miss?
That is certainly like, because they've set it up like this, there is the question of like, I don't know if I caught all of that.
Yeah.
Was that there? There is an element of that. And not in a way like Power of the Dog definitely does that where I'm like, I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
But also there's something about that movie that is like very intense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I might take some time before.
Yeah.
So that would bring like that element would bring rewatch value down.
Right. Same with like something like Parasite where it's like, what a fantastic film. I have very few notes about that. I don't think I have any notes about that movie. The rewatch value might go down simply because I am stressed about it. I don't know how many times or how long I would have to wait to watch it again because it's so stressful.
I don't know. I'd have to be in a very specific.
It is not a pleasant movie.
It probably would have to be somebody who hasn't seen it, and it was
to watch them react.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to see that person.
Again, is it
discover it? That's part of rewatch value. Yeah.
All of these kind of separately can live separately from like I think the cinematography would lend to the rewatch value.
Yeah.
And actually the lack of it doesn't feel so there aren't moments that are so uncomfortable. Even the shock value moments don't make it hard to watch.
Yeah. Sure.
Those
are even beautifully filmed.
They're beautifully filmed and I'm like I don't know. It's like I've watched plenty of movies where I'm like, ooh, that was awkward. I shouldn't have watched that with my family.
Sure.
And I'm not sure I would feel that awkward watching this with my family.
I would. I think. I don't want to watch the fucking the grave scene. I don't want to watch
like
that.
Almost. Well, your family's different though too. Like, I think my family would.
They'd probably just laugh the whole way. They'd be like, what is happening?
Not take it too seriously and not like try to like lean into it and like not be like, oh, it's an awkward moment, so I'm gonna
like that.
Lean into it.
Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to our superlatives. I want to talk about
so
that.
You give it a 3, the rewatch
value? I give it a 3 rewatch value, yeah.
I think I agree. I think a 3 is pretty solid. It doesn't, I would watch it again.
Yeah.
And I would be open to kind of like having my mind changed a little bit. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I am interested in knowing more about it. In the end, it's like how it concludes. I'm like, I'm just not that interested.
I think I might have to amend and just give it a 2 for rewatch now that, because I'm like imagining someone being like, I haven't seen it. Let me watch Saltburn. Whether I would want to do that, and I just don't think I do. Yeah, and there's just like more value to it than I thought there was, simply because we were rewatching. I was like, oh, that's interesting because it is beautifully shot, but it went from up from 3. Right, did not get up to 3. So I'm at 2, 5, and 2.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There are reasons to rewatch it. I'll give it a 3.
Okay.
It wouldn't be my choice to do it, but if someone's like, I haven't watched it, would you watch it with me? I'd be like, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I would be resistant.
All right.
Because I would be curious. I'd be like, what do you think? That's part of it too.
Yeah.
Because there are those movies that like, if it is if it's in the zeitgeist, if it's popular, I'm very curious to know what the people close to me actually think.
Sure.
And
I just don't want to watch it with them if I don't like it. Yeah. That's like, you can watch it on your own time and call me and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. I feel like, I would watch it again. I think that's interesting. I like that. Yeah. So
new rating
those are our
system.
ratings.
Woo.
Maybe we'll put an image of them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll get us like, what did we actually think? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay.
We'll give the star ratings.
Let's move on to our superlatives.
Great.
So we've got our Oscar-worthy moment.
Oscar-worthy moment. I really do think I want to give it to, there's just a moment where Oliver says the right thing to Rosamund Pike's character.
Yeah.
Whose name is, she's a great
Elspeth.
name.
Elspeth. Oh my God, what a weird name.
Great name.
Yeah.
Excellent. Old world name.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
When they have that scene where where he tells her that she's beautiful, he says something about Carey Mulligan's character that was like, yeah, but she was like doing a thing. Like she was like intentionally like making, like he said something that allowed Rosamund Pike's character to be like, oh my gosh, I don't have to feel guilty about that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all so vapid and it's all so like unreal. I'm finding that I'm like really intrigued by people who are, because in rewatching some of the Hunger Games, I feel this about Effie Trinket and Elizabeth Banks. That she is so good at being so grounded and real at these like very fake, fluffy problems.
Yes.
Especially in a world where real problems are happening.
Yeah.
There is something so interesting about how serious Effie is.
About propriety,
things.
about fashion, about things. It's like, okay, there's people dying in the next room, but like you really care about like how I'm using my napkin, and it's like, it's fascinating.
But it feels like something that is very important to Rosamund Pike at that moment.
Yeah.
Like her reaction is like, to see her relief and her reaction and her like I was like, oh, he said the right thing. He found his way in.
He pushed the button. Yeah.
And maybe it was crafted in a way that you could have been like, that was an accident. But I was like, wow, he's so smart.
Yeah. Yeah. It was on purpose for sure.
The way she reacted, she killed it. I was like, I know exactly how you feel and what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
She's incredible.
I love her. My moment is also a Rosamund Pike moment. It's
she's so good.
When they find Felix's body and then they all go, and it's like the dad comes in and he's like, oh, he's just cold. He just needs to warm up, get his thing. And Rosamund, it's a good moment, but Rosamund Pike is like looking away from the body. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, go away from there. It's almost time for lunch. And she just like walks off. It's like another moment of like kind of that weird, like this is actually the routine is more important than anything else that's happening. This is I need to rely on this routine. Yeah. And then they go have this like weird dinner where they're trying to have this weird lunch where they're trying to have a conversation while they're like coroners come and it's like taking the body away. It's just that moment where she just like, she screams, everybody runs, they're all grieving and doing this whole thing. And then she just come away from there. It's time for lunch. And she just walks off and I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I love Rosamund Pike.
She's great. She's excellent. Oscar. I mean, who knows? She might. She could win an Oscar.
I sure hope she does. It's so good. She's
really
so good. Nice. Okay. How about our unearned moment?
I think when they kick Farley out the second time.
Yeah. Interesting. Tell me more.
So Oliver frames Farley the first time.
Right. About selling off the stuff.
Yeah,
like
he's like kicked out of the house. Clearly was invited back for the party because he's like essentially part of the family.
Right.
He's been around.
He's a cousin
for his whole life.
Right.
So he's like part of that family, essentially.
Yeah.
That same dinner scene that we were just talking about, Farley is like having this moment where he's like, I have real people emotions. Can't we have real people emotions? And Oliver's clearly like reading the room and being like, we're talking about lunch.
Yeah.
We're doing lunch.
Yeah.
We're talking about my party.
Right.
The cake was good. Like he's playing the game. And obviously that's like really bugging Farley.
Right.
Obviously. And he's like, isn't it weird that he's still here? Why is he still here? And then it seems very odd. Like then Oliver's like, well, I wouldn't throw stones since you were doing drugs last night.
Right.
Does that mean you might be implicated in his death? Like, could he have overdosed because of you?
Right.
And because of that, he gets
sent away.
There's something about it where I'm like, that character doesn't fight back anymore.
Right.
In a way that I'm like, there is no way
that he
wouldn't be like, I'm so what?
Yeah.
Like, or just like lie about it.
Right. Or
just like lie about having drugs. Like, no, of course not. Like, why
would? Well, then do an autopsy and find out it wasn't.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with me. He was nowhere around me when he died. That's not how that went. There was no fight. I think you're right.
There's something about that moment that felt really weird to me.
Yeah.
And then there was no more Farley. Like that was the end of Farley.
Yeah.
After he'd already come back after.
Right. I was like, so why wouldn't he just be invited back again?
I mean, the dad was like, never come back.
Yeah,
Ever again.
I know. But I don't know.
Which was, again, interesting. But like, if the implication was like, he died because of you, that could have been interesting.
Yeah.
But the way that Oliver said it felt really weird and
right.
Like
it felt weak sauce. Just like was not it wouldn't have been justified in the world. I mean, maybe with like emotions high, they wouldn't, as he said.
I don't know if it's not justified, but I don't believe that the other characters wouldn't have read that. I mean, like obviously the sister did. They didn't like ignore it completely.
Right.
But like, and the dad ended up kicking him out anyway because he's like, he got the sense that like he's a weirdo.
Something's weird. Yeah.
And things kept going like he gets the idea that like things keep going wrong with this guy around.
Yeah.
Like at that point, even he wouldn't be like,
hey Farley, tell me what's going on.
You come back in because he has to go.
He has to go. So yeah, I'll check back in with Farley.
Especially with the like, I can't leave her. I don't know how.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah. I think it'd be best if I stayed. Ugh. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I didn't register that until now you said that about Farley.
Yeah, that moment with Farley I thought was didn't quite hit.
All right.
For me.
I think for me, the unearned moment is fucking the grave. Although what I do want to mention is that, and this is my little asterisk caveat, is just like the art style. It's so beautifully shot. It looks like a Renaissance painting, like the way that it's the composition of it with like the sky and the lighting and the
really
grave.
Beautiful.
Like I would expect to see like some Renaissance rendition of like some like Greek myth moment is really what it feels like.
Yeah.
The way it's lit and everything. But it really just isn't justified for me.
Yeah.
Most indie film moment.
I think the shot of the sister in the lake in like a floaty surrounded by like the green lily, like with the deck, like the straight down shot.
Yeah.
Like it felt like it was like in this, like we're kids doing summer things.
Yeah.
Maybe that like along with like them like frolicking in the grass, like that whole kind of montagey thing. And then that image of, it felt very like contemporary indie film to me. Like this, like lounging on the inner tube with like the beautiful, great, like gorgeous shot.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, what a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
That's mine.
Yeah, I think for me it's the very beginning and then at the very end where they have like the just the montages of like all the images throughout the film, like stuff that they splice together, just like little a split second of different moments that happen in the film. It was like very indie film to me, where he's like smoking, lying too, where it's like he's smoking and then 3 seconds later there's a scene where he's like, no, I don't smoke, but like we're watching Oliver smoke, telling the story, and then you have like all of like did I love him, and then there's all these like there's this music playing in the background, this kind of wash of sound, lo-fi, and then just like all these images, and I was like, it's so indie film.
Yeah. It feels very indie film. What just dawned on me, it feels like they couldn't decide whether to go the direction of Psycho or the direction of American Psycho.
Yeah.
They don't go to either.
That's
place.
Interesting. Yeah.
They're not like, what the fuck is going on? Like things keep, like it could have been a mystery where like things were happening.
Yeah.
And like, we find out that there's some weird, could have been Psycho.
Or we could be just following the Psycho in American Psycho. Yeah.
Could have been, I think if it was, they tried obviously the more Psycho route.
Yeah.
But they didn't like.
They kind of didn't commit to it.
They didn't commit to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot. I'm Pavi Prochko. And remember, if you want in on the upper crust, all you have to do is kill the entire family.
And I am Colin Funk. And remember, all you have to do is say the right thing, and Rosamund Pike might be your friend. We love that.
Awesome.
Okay, goodbye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, a Pavitas Productions project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Prochko. This podcast was produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Prochko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Two Grooms, One Plot for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at twogroomsOneplot@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.